You see, the most amazing thing about being a human being is that God addresses us, and we are capable of responding.
Yeah, I would invite you to turn, if you are of a mind. We aren't going to be reading from the book of Acts. We are going to give you a chance to speak the words of Psalm 23 with your own bodies. On page 137 in your hymnal is the King James version of Psalm 23. You may know it by heart, and then you don't need to open that hymnal, but should you desire to, we will speak all of the psalm together in unison. I'll give you time to find it. I invite you to listen for the voices of not only the people around you, but the people who have spoken these words through the ages. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou anointest my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And this reading this morning from John's Gospel, speaking of Jesus, the Good Shepherd. Very truly, I tell you, anyone who does not enter the sheepfold by the gate, but climbs in by another way, is a thief and a bandit. The one who enters by the gate is the shepherd of the sheep. The gatekeeper opens the gate for him, and the sheep hear his voice. He calls his own sheep by name, and he leads them out. When he has brought out all of his own, he goes ahead of them, and the sheep follow him because they know his voice. They will not follow a stranger, but they will run from him because they do not know him. Jesus used this figure of speech with them, but they did not understand what he was saying to them. So again, Jesus said to them, "Very truly I tell you, I am the gate for the sheep, and all who came before me are thieves and bandits, but the sheep did not listen to them. I am the gate. Whoever enters by me will be saved, and will come in and will go out and find pasture. The thief comes only to steal and to kill and to destroy. But I have come that they may have life and have it abundantly." May God add a blessing to the reading of this word.
Grace and peace to all of you. It is wonderful to be here with you today, and greetings from United Theological Seminary. We are so proud to claim Elizabeth as our alumna. It's a pleasure to be in worship with you in this tender time in the Christian year and tender time in the life of the UMC. I very much appreciate your prophetic presence, your undying commitment to inclusion. I know there's a big meeting going on, and I pray for the wind of the Spirit to prevail in that time. I grew up Baptist, so I don't know anything about church fusses at all. There are many connections between United and Hennepin. You have sent us faculty members, students. You have sent us board members, even 2 presidents from this congregation, Keita McVeigh and Dr. Wilson Yates. Thank you for that partnership over the years. And now, Elizabeth, whom we commend to you for this good season. There's a really popular course at Yale University. It's entitled Life Worth Living. And so the title of my sermon is basically cribbing the name of that course, taught by some friends of mine there at Yale. Students literally register for the course semesters in advance. It is so popular. It asks the big question: what is worth your life? It's an important question to be asking while in college, or before college, or all the days of our lives. Now, instructors caution those who sign up for the course, this course may wreck your life. We ought to have that warning on many syllabus, shouldn't we? Instructors caution that the text that they will read may interrogate all of their assumptions. In a consumerist society, it even probes the question, what is worth wanting? Now, the charism of the course is that it draws from lots of different traditions. It takes Holy Scripture, it takes the Quran, it takes Confucius, Buddhism, Taoism, Plato, the lives of Oscar Wilde, Ida B. Wells, Frederick Douglass, the teachings of Jesus. In humility, it does not assume a single source of wisdom in the world, but there is to be gleaned from all of these good insight. One of the things that the course stresses is your life is worth more than what you earn. Your life is worth more than where you live. Your life is worth more than all the degrees you accrue. That one's really hard for this academic to hear. The course asks uncomfortable questions of expressive individualists, how one theologian has described the identity of contemporary people. The most fraught question is, to whom do we answer? Eastertide circles back to these familiar texts, and I believe that they point toward a life worth living. In this most beloved and most frequently recited psalm, we hear life lived within the sphere of God's care. I really don't want to relegate that psalm to funerals. As Elizabeth said, we should read it regularly. In a sense, it points to life in its fullness, and it turns the question of to whom do we answer really back on God. It seems that God answers to the human through provision and protection and purpose. I couldn't help but alliterate just once as a Baptist. It seems in this psalm that God answers the human, and not simply the human answering to God. God, as shepherding presence, guides the pilgrim through all the exigencies of life and the shadow of death, arriving at an overflowing cup for all the days. The reality of danger and distress, lack and threat are acknowledged in the psalm. It's a different genre, actually, in the Psalter. It's not a communal lament. It's not a song of thanksgiving. It's not a royal or wisdom psalm. In fact, it is sui generis. It's a song of confidence. It's a descriptor of trust. God restores the whole self. God is both protecting shepherd and welcoming host. Well, the same shepherding imagery is picked up in John 10. And once again, the metaphors stack up on each other. Jesus is both good shepherd as well as gate. And you can know those hearing that long statement would have probably scratched their heads. What actually is he saying? Clearly, the emphasis of the passage is that Jesus is the one to be followed for his tender knowledge of them, calling them by name. His is the voice to be trusted. In a day when calls to say their name, this text takes on new importance. It is significant to use the name that a person prefers, even if it befuddles some of us, as the name does not always stay the same. This past Friday, I went to a sheep farm, which is pretty good preparation for Good Shepherd Sunday. I was just loving looking at all the sheep on the screens. When I entered the barn where the ewes and the lambs were, my host for the day, a venerable sheep farmer, spoke quietly. They didn't run away. And because I didn't say much, they tolerated my presence also. But there was a familiarity of the sheep with this loving presence who tends them day by day. I ask a silly question, how do the ewes know which one is their lamb? Oh, they figure it out. They talk to each other. I hear mama over here and lamb over here, and they find each other. I thought, what a wonderful metaphor. Calling out, finding, being near. Now, the passage in John has often been used in a destructive way. It's been read in a supersessionist way, as if everything that came before Jesus castigates the Jewish kinfolk whose sacred day begins, sacred season begins tomorrow with Passover. A better reading is simply to accent it's perilous to follow the wrong shepherd. All that went before built toward what Jesus was bringing. More likely, he is warning against messianic pretenders that preyed upon the people. And if you read Josephus, I would recommend it if you're having trouble going to sleep. Read Josephus, and he will tell you all of the wannabe messianic pretenders in first century Palestine. It had its share of revolutionaries and people pretending. The summative verse of this section in John offer these words, I came that they might have life and have it abundantly. And the best translation is, have it to the full. And you have this echo of the overflowing cup and life in all of its fullness. That sounds like a flourishing life. That sounds like what the Yale course is trying to discover. What kind of life is this? A contemporary theological understanding of abundant life might include a purposeful vocation, doing what makes your heart rise up and is for the good of others. Participation in a generative community, delight in sustaining relationships, and a sense of security in your faith, no matter what comes. The church would be helped if we could recover the theological meaning of the shepherding imagery. In the iconography of the church by the 4th century, Jesus as shepherd with lamb on shoulder was being replaced as Constantine had wed the state to the church. No longer was there the shepherd's hook, there was the gilded crozier. No longer the crown of thorns, there was the triple tiara of the Pope, and Christ was the Pantocrator, the ruler above, beyond all things. And too often the church has taken that as its trajectory, above, beyond, not with. Recovering shepherding imagery could call the church to simplicity, to sacrifice, to presence with those who have lost their way. How does one forge a life worth living? It begins with a question. Is the life I am living the life that God is beckoning? It continues to be a work in progress, but it requires a credo. A credo is not a list of dogmatic statements. A credo is that upon which we can lean our hearts. People, places, vision, and hope. We can learn from the wisdom of the prophets, of the saints, those who make their slow way across the earth with us. A flourishing life requires us to learn to deal with failure. We will fail. How we deal with it is what portrays our character. When we ask, to whom do we answer? We actually open up the possibility of fruitful regard for our neighbors, our environment, toward the very source of life itself, the loving shepherd. Actually, we answer to them all, and they answer to us. You see, the most amazing thing about being a human being is that God addresses us, and we are capable of responding. I've often wished I could hear the very clear word, Abraham, Sarah, take up and move to a new country. Well, actually, most words from God require discernment and radical trust, which entails risk, and yet we have enough faith to take the next hesitant step. We listen to the voice, and as Jürgen Moltmann likes to say, the road emerges as we walk on it. Now, it may seem a rank luxury to ponder a life worth living when our lives do not experience the jeopardy of a soldier in Ukraine, a child in Gaza, a young woman in a refugee camp along the Thai-Burma border. Perhaps our lives will be more worth living as we begin to answer to them in our prayer, through our voting, through our giving, through our advocacy. A life worth living expresses joy. My friend Angela Williams-Gorel, who has taught in the Yale Project, considers joy a counter-agent to America's despair. Oh, she's not fluffy about it. It's not easy, it's gritty, it's not ephemeral. Joy is what we feel deeply in our bones when we are connected to that which is good and beautiful and meaningful. Joy does not exclude suffering, but actually allows one to plumb more deeply the fullness of life. And we are unfailingly accompanied by God's own shepherding presence. But finally, what life is worth living? It is participating in Christ's resurrection, in the Paschal mystery of dying and rising. Resurrection is not just about Jesus, nor is it simply past tense. As the old Roman liturgy puts it, the joy of the resurrection renews the whole world, and that becomes the very rhythm of our lives through life, through death. Already, we are risen to walk in newness of life. Thanks be to God.